The influence that Tiger Schulman's had on me as a person it's exponential. I don't even know if I can put it into words. The best way I can describe it to you is, I don't think I'd be alive. I think I would have died a long time ago from the lifestyle that I was living. It would have caught me at some point, and it would have just spiraled out of control, and it would have gotten worse and worse and worse. Had I not fallen into this organization the way that I did, I wouldn't have made it. I'd be dead. Life growing up for me was, it was rough, for lack of a better term. You know, I grew up without a dad. I never met my father, and that was pretty much the underlining situation of my entire life. When I was about 6 months old, my father had beat my mother half to death at that point, and you know, she decided that it was time to get out of that situation. You know, my mom was always, you know, she worked her ass off and put herself through school, so from that point on, she had to work so hard, so she wasn't really around too much, and I was kind of on my own, and at 12 years old, I wasn't really ready for that. That's when I started to really get angry, and it was an overwhelming force in my life, and I had no control over it. I started smoking cigarettes on a pretty regular basis. I was getting high and smoking weed pretty regularly at that point too. I started drinking on a fairly regular basis, and when I would take substances, the anger could go away, and I could be the person that I felt that I needed to be. I could be happy, I could be the life of the party, you know, I could be that guy. So escaping my reality became something that I wanted to do on a very regular basis, and I did. To me, everything in my life was predetermined. I was gonna be this person because I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask for my father to abandon me and never show up again, because I didn't ask for that, and it was given to me. I had this attitude that the world was out to get me. It was everybody else's fault. It wasn't my doing, and my outcome was predetermined. So I just did what I thought I was supposed to do. I became the statistic that I was supposed to be, essentially. When you're young and you're kind of at home all the time, you really don't see too much of the world that you're in. So you kind of think that your normal is just what everybody lives in, right? And then as you get into junior high and you start going out into the world and you start, you know, looking for acceptance from your peers, not just your family, and you start to realize that you're the only one that literally doesn't have a father. Did not know the man, don't know what he looks like, I don't know what he sounds like, and that just caused me to be angry at everybody. My schoolyard bully didn't think twice about, you know, throwing the non-existence of my father back in my face. He picked on me for years, and one day in school, he actually used that and said something about my situation, and I snapped. It was 7th grade, and I snapped. I had a complete psychotic break in the middle of class. Teacher jumped out of her seat, grabbed a hold of me, physically restrained me, got me off, and she must have heard what he said, or the other kids must have said something. I don't know. I was blank at that point. But she threw him out of the classroom, and I just sat there and I put my head down and I just cried. I cried as hard as I could cry. And you know, that's a scary moment when you lose control like that. And it was at that point that my anger, it took over at that point. And I think that sent me deeper into substance abuse. By the time I got to 9th grade, I just didn't care anymore. You know, so I remember the first time that I was introduced to cocaine, the immediate impact that it had on me, the only thing that I could think about after that was, where am I gonna get more? It definitely took a hold of me, and at a young age, it was very detrimental to everything in my life at that point. I graduated, and then it was kind of like, all right, I needed money. I had a pretty solid habit going at this point, and I needed some money to keep up with that. So I got a job working at the local Jiffy Lube, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun for me. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. I was working with cars, I was working with my hands, I was getting dirty. Side benefit to that was my favorite bar, Mr. Beery's, was right across the street. So I would work, you know, clean the place spotless. I would head right across the street, get over there at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I would close it down. And bars in New York stay open to 4 a.m., baby. So it was an all-night affair, and it was, heavy drinking and whatever drugs came across my plate that night. I didn't have a no button at this point. That was just my existence. That's who I was, and that was my life, and that's the way it was gonna be. So one day I'm at work, and this girl rolls up. Her name is Jill, and we look at each other, and I'm gonna tell you what, man, the stars just aligned that day, and that was it. From that point on, she was my girl. We just hit it off right away, and to make a very long story short, we wound up moving in together and, starting a life with one another at that point. And she came home one day and she told me, she was like, I really wanna do something. I wanna get back into the gym she's like, I wanna kind of do something. And I was like, okay. The next night, she comes like somersaulting through the front door. This girl is through the moon. She's got a gray Tiger Schulman's bag with everything in it. I'm like, where were you? And she's like, oh my God. I stopped in, I asked them a couple questions. They asked me if I wanted to take a class. So I took a class and I joined. And she couldn't stop talking about it. She was hooked. She went from going twice a week to 3 times a week to 4 times a week to, I started driving to the school instead of driving home after work because I knew that's where she would be. So I would park my car and I would sit on the hood of my car, eat my Taco Bell right in front of the class while they were training. Sensei Joe Curran, who was the owner and head instructor, he started noticing me out there, and he quickly found out who I was. So he would start coming out, and he would walk out and we'd come out in the parking lot and be, hey, what's up, man? What's going on? I'm Sensei, what's your name? Yeah, I'm Mike, what's up, man? Total attitude, right? I'm a tough guy, I don't need this guy. And he was like, why don't you come in and train? Nah, man, I don't got the money for that, dude. I ain't got no time either. I'm busy. All right, cool, man. Yo, be good. I'll see you later. Walk back into the school and keep teaching. And this became a very regular occurrence. I would drive to the school, I would sit outside, I would watch Jill. I would never go into the school. I would sit outside and I would watch her train. He would come out and we would have that very raw conversation. And I'm like, did you hear me the last 17 times that I don't have the money, I don't have the time, and this is not my thing? Like, I was in my head, I started to be like, who is this guy? Secretly, I had always wanted to do the martial arts. When I was growing up, it was one of those things that the other kids could afford to do, but I couldn't. And I had a lot of friends that became high-level, ranking black belts, and I was always infatuated with it. So I always had that in the back of my head, but I was scared to stop being who I was in order to train in the martial arts because I knew I couldn't have both. And I would say that was the first time in my life that I ever questioned who I had become. It was the first time in my life that I started to think about what it is that you were doing, where you're going with yourself, and where you're gonna wind up if you keep going in this direction. The crazy thing about it is that Jill got so into it that she actually got hired by the school. So when she would come home from class, it was, attack me, grab me like this. And so I was learning the actual moves because she was throwing me around the apartment every night. And over the course of the 6 months, I would say, neither Jill or Sensei Curran stopped. Sensei Curran became more relentless. The more he learned about her, the more he learned about me, the more he came after me to come and train. The conversation started to get deeper. He started to spend more time talking to me. I still wouldn't come into school though. I wasn't going in there. I go in there, he wins. So she comes home and she's really excited one night because she gets moved into the intermediate level class. So that day I went and I sat on my car and I watched. I was like, man, that kind of fits into my piece right there. That was the first time I ever walked into the school. I walked into the school and I made the decision that I was gonna train and I was gonna start, and I was done with being who I was, and I wanted to be something more for the first time in my life. And in my head, I guess I must have realized that this is what I need. This is the guy that I need to guide me. Sensei Curran comes walking off the mat, realizes that I'm in the school, but he plays it cool, man. He's like, hey, what's up? Walks right past me and goes and sits down in his office. Don't give me the time of day. I was like, So he had the glass on the door so you could see in, and I tapped on the glass with my credit card. Gives me the wave, come in, I open the door, and I take my credit card, and I chuck it down on the desk at him. I was like, I'm ready. And he just looked at the card, and he looked at me with this look of disdain in his eyes, and he took my credit card, and he threw it at me. Boom, hit my chest and bounced on the floor. He goes, I'll decide when you're ready. You make it through a month of classes without dying, and then I'll take that. He goes, but you got to prove yourself first. I went to my first class, and I went absolutely bonkers on the mat. Everything you can imagine. And I couldn't even finish the class. And he just walk by and he's like, you see what you've done? And then he just kept walking. And after the first month, he did what he told me that he was gonna do, and I came into the office and I told him, I said, I made it a month, man. I said, I didn't make it through all the classes. I said, but I didn't quit. And that's the first time in my life in 22 years that I could actually say those words, that I didn't quit, because I quit everything else. And he's like, you're right, you didn't. He goes, we'll make you an official student now. And Sensei Curran changed. He wasn't standoffish anymore. He was accepting, but he knew that like a wild horse, I needed to be broken. You did 20 push-ups on your own, do another 20. When you're done with those 20, do 20 more. And he proceeded to break me physically and mentally. That was his goal. And I knew it. I could tell that that's what he was doing, and I wasn't gonna be beat. You're not gonna beat me. I know what you're trying to do. I know you're trying to make me quit, but for the first time in my life, I'm not going to. And I got so addicted to that so quickly. It was the best drug that I ever took in my life. And it's just the most honest place that you've ever been in your life, personally. And you push yourself so hard in the class to the point where your physical nature kind of disappears and you have nothing left physically, so your mind has to take over. And at the end of that class, I call it the moment of truth. For better or for worse, you see the truth. I didn't like the truth that I saw. I liked how I felt, but I realized that I really had to make changes. And it wasn't until probably the most profound thing that was ever said to me in my life to this day, where I was, just a regular student in the school, and I was sitting there after class and I was complaining about my life. And Sensei Curran had known about my past now at this point, right? And he knew where I would come from and who I was. And he grabbed me, he goes, come with me for a second. And he pulls me into the bathroom. You see that guy right there? And he points at me in the mirror. I said, yeah. He goes, that's the only person that you have to blame for anything in your life. He goes, you blamed your whole entire life. Your whole existence has been blamed on a man you've never met. Can you explain that to me? How it's his fault? You've never met him, not a second in your life, and it's his fault that you are the way you are? He goes, the man in the mirror is the only person responsible for who you are, and he's the only one who can change it. And he walked out. And I just stood there staring at myself in the mirror, and I couldn't argue with his logic. And it was that moment of truth that training in the martial arts gave me that allowed me to be honest with myself for the first time. Because if you're not going to admit the truth to yourself, there's no way that you could be helped. I was doing my usual. I'm in Mr. Beery's in my seat at my spot, and I got my beer and my shot and my cigarette, and I had just gotten my blue belt. And the duality of the way that I was living really hit me when I got my blue belt. The things that Sensei said to the class as he gave me my blue belt started to bother me. And as I'm sitting there and, I'm getting to the point where my sobriety is starting to slip, and I'm split and I'm torn and I'm just in my head and I'm like, what am I doing? This is what I was told that I can be now over here. But you're still being the person that you don't want to be. You don't want to be this person. The owner of the bar, he comes over and he's like, hey man, you good? And I looked at him, I said, I'm really good. And I put my cigarette out in the shot, left the pack and the lighter, and I got up and I walked out. And that was it. Never smoked a cigarette again. 23 and a half years. Never snorted a line of cocaine again. Done. I was done with drugs. I was done with drinking. I shut it off like a light switch. And it was because in my head, I just wasn't that person anymore. For the first time in my life, I realized that I had control over who I was, and I did not need to go down the path that was predetermined for me, because it wasn't. That was all crap. It's just lies that I told myself my whole life. Excuses that I made for myself. And in the martial arts, we don't accept excuses from our students. Our students come in and they give us excuses and we tell them the truth. And then it's their job whether or not they want to hear the truth. And I chose to hear it. And I walked out that day and that was it. Also, at work, it got bad one day. And basically what happened was an older woman came in with her car and I was working on it. And we had litmus paper that we would put in the radiator, and that would tell you whether or not the radiator had the right amount of antifreeze and water in it, and whether or not it needed to be serviced. And I tested the litmus paper and it came back perfect. It was great. My boss came over to me and he started questioning me about the sales pitch that I was about to do. And he said, how's everything looking? I was like, everything's good. This is just gonna be an oil change. And he's like, you tested the radiator? I said, yeah, it's good. He goes, was it? And he takes the litmus paper and he opens the thing up and he takes one and he drops it in a puddle of water on the floor and picks it up and he goes, it doesn't look very good to me. And he handed it to me. As soon as he handed it to me and I took it, my whole life flashed in front of my eyes. And I knew that this was right here. You're at a fork in the road. Who you gonna be? And I could, all I could hear was Sensei's voice. I looked at him, I said, no. And I threw the key at him. I said, you do it. I quit. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life. I mean, I was a dead man walking. And a couple classes, a few months in the martial arts changed 22 years of who I had become. Like that. That's not who I was supposed to be. It's not the way that it was supposed to go. My path is not predetermined. The martial arts was the first thing to ever prove to me that my actions are what counts. The decisions that I made are the reasons why I am where I am. People say that people never change. That is 1,000% incorrect. Anybody can change at any moment. You can't change anybody else, I can tell you that. You ain't changing the world. You can't change anybody else. The man in the mirror, though, you have complete control over him. You make the choice. Every drink you drink, you open the bottle. Every line you snort, you chopped it up. Every joint you smoke, you rolled it. You put it to your lips. The choice is always yours. I had a revelation when I started training. And the revelation that I had was there are two types of problems that you have. The self-inflicted problems and problems that other people cause you to have, right? The self-inflicted problems are, you're gonna find those are the easiest ones to deal with because you created them. You created them, you know why they're there, so essentially you know how to undo them. If you know how to turn the light switch on, you can figure out how to turn the light switch off. But we get a lot of problems handed to us, right? Someone else's choices and decisions cause a negative effect in our life. And I realized a long time ago that someone else's choices and decision caused this negative effect, and I turned it to a victim mentality. And then how do you choose to deal with that? You choose to deal with it with drugs. You deal with it with depression. You deal with it by letting your anxiety levels swell. Some people start overeating. Some people start undereating. Some people drink too much. But the issue is this, is you did not cause them, but they're still your problems. And the way you react to your problems dictates the outcome. So for a long time, I thought that I was destined to be a certain person because of what was given to me. And when my sensei showed me when I started training that your path is not predetermined, you don't have to be a victim to someone else's decisions. It wasn't your fault, but it's still your problem to deal with. And through your training, the way that I did, you will realize that if you react to those problems correctly, your path will not be predetermined and you can go where you want to go. And that's why we come in and we train in the martial arts. That's why we come to Tiger Shamans, to train. So we keep our minds strong, so we don't ever become a victim. It's how you choose to deal with those problems is what's gonna dictate your future. That was a great class tonight, you guys. Good. You guys are dismissed.